One. Hey there, John Moore here, and I am a shamanic teacher and practitioner. I live in Maine in the US, in the northeast of the US. And today I'm going to talk to you about the connection between shamanism and animism. And what is the connection between shamanism and animism? What the heck is shamanism and what the heck is animism? And how are they connected? So let me talk about all of these things, and I will take them in order. And one of the things I like to do, if you've ever listened to my podcast or watched any of my other videos, is that I do like to define my terms. The reason for this is not because my terms are superior to anyone or I'm trying to get you to adopt my definitions for things, but it's just to build understanding so that you can understand what I mean when I say something like shamanism or when I say something like animism, okay? So let me begin with shamanism, and I have a whole video on what is shaman and what is shamanism and what do shamans do. I'll link to that in here, but shamanism is a constellation of beliefs and practices, and those beliefs include animism. I'll describe that in a moment, and the practices include three components, which are altered states of consciousness, traveling in non-ordinary realms of reality or non-ordinary worlds, and working with helping spirits. And again, I go into each of these topics in details in other videos on my channel. I just want to hit on that. So again, the constellation of beliefs and practices makes up shamanism, and the beliefs include animism. So let's talk about what animism is. There are lots of different definitions of animism, and you can find ones that more or less agree or disagree or what have you. And there are, academic disagreements about what constitutes animism. So, but there are things that are in common in all of the different definitions of animism. One is the belief in spirits. Notice I said multiple spirits, not a spirit. Spirits, and that everything, some animists believe that all living things have spirits, trees and grass and, people and animals, all of that. Some animists believe, and this is included in some of the definitions of animism, that everything has a spirit, including things that we would consider non-living, such as rocks or mountains or, the sky, that sort of thing. Here's my take on what animism means within my practice of shamanism, and different practitioners of different forms of shamanism will not agree with this, and that is totally fine. I'm not here to argue. I'm just saying this is how I look at, this is my worldview, this is my approach to it, and this might make things a little bit clearer to you. So instead of saying, as a shamanic practitioner, I have an animistic worldview, meaning I believe in there are spirits, that the animating force behind everything is spiritual. But beyond that, my personal belief is that everything is a spirit. Some things have physical representations. See, we live in our perceptual world is very tied into the physical world. I hold up this pen. You see a pen. This is a physical object. But behind this pen, in my shamanic perception, when I go into journey form, I would see this pen represented as spirit. So I look at it this way. Anything that I can recognize as an individual thing is a spirit. And that gets a little bit complicated, right? Because is a relationship an individual thing, although there are multiple parts? Well, is a human being an individual, even though we are made up of multiple parts? I've got eyes and a brain and a tongue and lungs and cells and fluids and all kinds of stuff going through, that make up my physical body. Um, you know, am I still an individual? And I would argue yes. And so I would argue that or I'm not going to argue, but I would say that a relationship does have a spirit that is made up of other spirits. So this is, again, this is my worldview. Other practitioners, other people will believe in different things. It's all a mental model, anyhow. It's all, this is just a model of how I make sense of things from a shamanic perspective. If a couple comes to me, which happens from time to time, to do shamanic work, to do healing as part of the relationship, you know, I may treat them individually, but I'm also treating the relationship, right? So there's healing that can happen in the relationship. So anything that can be perceived as individual. So this pen in a middle world shamanic journey is a spirit. But what happens when I take the cap off the pen and hold these things up separately? Well, then I perceive these as two spirits. But again, when it's together, this is still a single spirit made up of multiple spirits. So everything I like to say we're systems of systems. So as a human being, I have a physical body, which is a system, but it's made up of multiple systems. I have a nervous system, a circulatory system, a muscular system, a skeletal system, a respiratory system, a digestive system. Beyond that, I have a number of spiritual systems. I have an etheric body. I have an etheric double. I have an astral body. I have a spirit body, which is more or less formless. There's other spiritual systems divide the spiritual bodies up into 12 or 22 parts or 3 parts or 7 parts. Again, this is just a mental model so that we can grasp things that we're perceiving that are beyond physical reality. And that's I understand it's a little hard to grasp. It's hard for me to grasp it sometimes, even though very frequently I'm having a direct experience of what's going on. That being said, my experience of animism is that everything is a spirit. Some things have a physical representation. So another way to think of it is sort of layers of density, right? We start out, the least dense layer is, maybe the layer of what, we might call Atman or spirit, which is formless, but it's our connection to the divine, and it has no mass. It doesn't really have shape. It's sort of the center of a circle, but no circle. The center of a circle that has infinite radius it's tough to conceptualize it in words because words are very limited in describing these things. Okay. And then a little bit denser than that, we have the astral body, and the astral body is strongly formed by thoughts, visualization, imagination. When we dream or we astral project or we shamanically journey, we can shapeshift. This is where a lot of shapeshifting happens, or things are not as solid as they seem because they're essentially formless. They don't have mass in the way that we understand it, but there are laws. There are astral laws. I almost said physical laws. Or astral laws. So a little bit more dense than that is the etheric double or the etheric body, which is our energy body, or they're two different things. The etheric double is the part of the etheric that's very close to the body. Some people perceive this as the aura, that's really close. And then if you see auras, you can see this shape that's much larger. It extends, really, really far out for most people. I have picked up on them using different means, dowsing and things like that, 40, 45 feet away from somebody. So, and this is more formless than the etheric body. So again, we're getting, denser and denser and denser until there's the layer or of reality that is the physical layer, and that is our physical body. This is very dense. I can move it using thought, using mental energy. And when I move it, the energy systems of the etheric move, and maybe the astral deforms a little bit or does some things. But each layer can affect all of the other layers. This is a long way of explaining that there are lots and lots and lots of spirits out there that don't have physical representation. You might think of ghosts or fairies or sprites or power animals or gods and goddesses or angels and demons. All of these things, and a secret is that mythological things that are really common, like dragons and unicorns and fairies and sprites and these kinds of things, they exist, just not on the physical plane. And so you can experience them through shamanic journeying, you can experience them in your dreams, you can experience them, and they can change shape quite a bit because they are, spiritual beings don't have physical mass. Again, they're essentially formless. So everything is a spirit, some things have physical representation. As kind of an opposite look at things. We tend to look at things, the Western way of looking at things is, I am a body, I have a spirit, I have a soul, I have this, I have that. But my argument is that we are these things. You are your spirit, you are your soul, you are your astral body. These are all parts of you. These are all systems within the greater system. And the physical body is one small slice of that. It's not even the majority of what and who you are. But because we are so tied into our physical perceptions of things, we think this is it. It's very tempting to think, knocking on something solid, this is solid, it's all there is. But even when we look at this scientifically, this desk that I'm knocking on is primarily empty space, like 99.99999% empty space. And yes, I realize the atoms, electrons, subatomic particles, the quarks, everything, those are sort of physical, but when you get into the smaller and smaller bits of things, we have stuff behaving in really strange ways, like quantum entanglement and quantum tunneling, where things go from one place to another without crossing any of the space in between. Hey, that's teleportation, right? That's kind of the same thing, just on a physical level. So, long story short, animism is part of what is shamanism, but there are forms of animism that are not shamanic. So all shamanism is animistic, but not all animism is shamanic or shamanistic, depending on how you want to say that. I like shamanic, it's easier for me to say. So there are lots of forms of animism out there, like Taoism. And yes, there is shamanism within Taoism, but not always. And it's tough to point to Taoism as any one specific set of practices. It is lots and lots of things to lots and lots of different people. Shinto is another form of animism where there are spirits of place and spirits of waterfalls and nature spirits and all of these things. And not necessarily shamanic. I'm not an expert in Shintoism, but I have not heard of any practices from Shintoism that are particularly shamanic. So they are closely allied, and the thought is that historically, tribal cultures prehistoric, actually historically, but prehistorically, probably developed a sense of animism first, and then shamanism second, but we don't know that. But we do, I like to say that shamanism is the oldest set of spiritual practices that are around, because animism is about belief and not about specific practice, where shamanism is about both belief and specific practices. And we know that there were prehistoric people practicing shamanism. We have evidence of it. We have evidence of it among among hunter-gatherer tribes that exist today that have not been really that have not really changed their culture much in thousands and thousands of years. So, there's an interesting book coming out. Maybe I'll review it at some point. I think it's coming out in the spring of next year. That is claiming that, it has evidence of shamanism being several 100,000 years old. So I'll be curious to see what that is, and if it's worthwhile, I'll give it a review on this channel. So that is it for discussing the connection of shamanism and animism. I hope this has been educational for you. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. I've got a lot more stuff coming. Stay happy and healthy, and I will talk to you real soon.